you have all these very warlike cultures who became Christians. So you can, I mean, throughout history, throughout early Christian history, like you can see that barbarism
Yeah.
in them, the way they tortured and executed and were, I mean, hell, even like the early Crusades and stuff, it was actually the Muslims who were the ones who are trying to preserve art and culture and stuff like that. They preserved a lot of uh, Christian art and culture during the Crusades.
Welcome to Better Than Podcasts. Hello, everyone. My guest today is Tony Anable. Tony is a veteran and is now retired from his professional career. The catalyst for that was that he started to have some psychological difficulties due to wartime PTSD. This conversation, I've known Tony for a few years now, and I knew that I wanted to have him on my podcast. I knew that I wanted to share our conversations with all of you, but I didn't really have an idea what we would even talk about. And so what unfolded is just the most beautiful, authentic perspective of someone who is struggling with severe PTSD. Tony is a character. The man walks around in kilts. His mustache is phenomenal. And you'll see a little bit of bare leg, but I promise he won't flash you. So enjoy this conversation. I'm so happy to share this perspective with you. And if this is something that kind of motivates you to maybe learn more about what is going on in the veterans community, reach out and we can put you in touch with people if you want to get involved, like as a volunteer, or if you have services that you think that you could offer to these wonderful people who are not experiencing the world the way that we have, and we kind of all have a responsibility for that. So I'm not going to get preachy about war or the veterans hospital or anything like that, but if this conversation inspires you, just reach out and get involved. So please enjoy my good friend Tony Anable. Right before I got on here, Jason was watching a YouTube video, and it was like people invading capitals in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty stressful to watch.
Yeah. Remember that one time in 1812?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a good time now.
Huh?
It's not a good time right now we're living in.
Mm-mm. What do you think about it?
Me personally, I don't know. I try not to cross any lines. I try to stay as unbiased as possible and try to keep myself in the middle.
As neutral as you can.
Pretty much, because either way you go about it, you're going to offend somebody or anger somebody or what have you. And I mean, I'm a combat vet. I've had multiple deployments. I don't want that kind of stress. Man.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I really don't.
Yeah.
So,
I just don't even know what I think about it because it's so bizarre.
yeah.
Like I heard this one guy saying, like somebody asked him, well, what do you think is going to happen if we can't resolve this? And he's like, I'm scared it's going to look like Syria, where you've got all of these, different groups who are just either battling each other or teaming up to battle the power
Yeah.
structure or whatever.
I personally don't think it'll ever come to that, but I mean, there might be smaller, maybe more localized. I don't know if insurrection is the right word to put it. Yeah, I wouldn't call it insurrection, but
It's
riot.
hard because we're talking about our own country. It's not like a
Yeah,
country that's over there somewhere. It's like, but yeah.
yeah. How I see it is, folks on both sides, whether that's extreme conservatism, or the far right or the far left, or they're both wrong. I mean, you know, in certain aspects. What happened at the Capitol, was in my mind almost a terroristic threat. The right wing, or at least what I've been seeing from the media, is complaining about an unfair election and whatnot. So they wanted to go to the Capitol and essentially stop democracy. You know, um, which isn't right. And just I was watching the news when Bill Barr, President Trump's former attorney general, talk about that there wasn't even enough widespread fraud to even change the election results regardless. Like, this is from Trump's cabinet who actually said this,
Mhm.
and
But
yet
here these people are, have convinced themselves that this is an unfair election. And, I mean, even though the evidence staring them in the face says differently, they just absolutely choose to believe that it is the way that they think that it is.
it's
Why? What do you
I
think
don't
about
it's
that?
honest it's to me it almost feels like a cult mentality.
Mhm.
They got they got this certain individual who 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 they put on this pedestal to basically be their messenger. What he says goes, regardless of the facts or proof inherent therein. And it's almost it's almost a like an overzealous cult following.
Why are they so willing to do that? Like, why are they looking for the strong man, because it, it seems like that's why they like him, right? Because he's really boorish and doesn't care about any type of etiquette or, anything like that. It's like one of the things that they celebrate most about the guy. But I don't, what I can't understand is how they're so dedicated to the idea that somebody's going to come and save them,
Yeah.
that they're willing to just look the evidence in the face and still deny it. Like, I guess that's really what I'm having a hard time understanding.
I'm the same way, and I actually have a family member who is exactly like that, on the right side, politically, and it got to the point where I ended up just deleting her off Facebook because I was tired of hearing it. It's like I could throw out these facts nonstop, but then she would come back with, well, oh, the media is a lie, or Trump, blah, 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 said this or whatever, and I'm like, dude, you can't just watch one news source. Like, you gotta, no matter what your political affiliation is, man, you gotta look at at least me personally, I look at multiple news sources, on both, conservative and liberal, and liberal media sources, and even some like outside sources like the BBC, or stuff like that,
Mhm.
to try to have a clearer picture of what's going on, and to at least try to get somewhat of an informed opinion. Um, but yeah, it's
How
it's
much
it's
how much do you trust the stuff that we're being told in the media? Because I've been having some real glitches in my thought process because I will watch one news outlet after another, like completely like discredit themselves from one news story to another, and I just think, or just blatantly like, leaving out facts, and you know what I'm saying? And I feel like no matter where I go, there's a perspective that's being pushed that they want you to, a narrative that they want you to accept. So when I watch the news, I feel like what I'm doing is trying to figure out what they want me to believe about any particular situation. That's how I've come to start watching the news these days.
yeah, and I agree with you. You know, in one hand, media is very essential, and our Bill of Rights,
Democracy.
Bill of Rights has that freedom of speech and freedom
Yep.
of press, and I wholeheartedly believe that. But yes, I do agree that the media is very skewed, depending on where that source is coming from. Um, and there are a lot of half truths or even complete omittance of truths. It's a fine example of yellow journalism. To sensationalize or even exaggerate the truth, to fit that particular group's agenda. And yeah, that's why I tend to look at different news sources, to try to paint a picture of what's really going on instead of one side of what's going on.
Yeah, I've started watching RT so I can get an impression of how the rest of the world is looking at us. Because you go on Russia Today and they're like,
Yeah.
well, in other American news, and you're like, oh, geez, you know, it's pretty insane. Um, what I think is really interesting is the idea that like how Americans view themselves and then how the rest of the world sees us. Like it
Mhm.
used to be kind of a joke, like, Americans are like loud and obnoxious or whatever, but now it's like, I don't
Now
know.
they're louder and more obnoxious.
Yeah, in way scarier ways. Like, yeah, it's
Um,
pretty, I don't know. Yeah, it's
yeah.
weird to watch. It's weird because I'm just kind of sitting back and observing, you know?
Mm, just yeah, it's almost waiting to watch the world burn. It feels like it sometimes.
Yeah, it
Um,
definitely does. Um, yeah, I don't, because there's so many different things going on, and now like our new president, like we're going back into Syria. So that's another
oh,
thing.
really?
Yeah,
I
well,
didn't know about that
because
yet.
Trump had like pulled troops out and put them back in Iraq, which, okay, all right. So he had taken those troops out of Syria and moved them. And now Biden just, I guess, is reversing that and bringing those troops back in.
Mm.
Yeah. And that's like another, like you said, we're just sitting here, waiting to watch the world burn. And it's like, one thing after another, and then you hear like some news outlet will have some terrifying story about China, and then China Russian conflict, and then
Yeah.
and you're just like, whoa. And then while all that's happening, like everything at home is like pretty good. Things are pretty
But
good over here.
that was, I didn't vote for him, but that was one thing I did like that Trump at least was trying to do, was trying to bring soldiers home and
Hmm.
get them out of Afghanistan and stuff like that. I did like that. I feel like we've been there way too long, and that there's really no point for us to be over there anymore to begin with. I mean, I understand the reason.
What,
I
maybe you
know.
could explain it to me, like what, you know what I mean, like I mean, this has been going on for 20 years, yeah,
I mean, even further than that, if
if
you're
you go back
taking the
to the Gulf.
Soviets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that region's been dealing with invasion for, you know,
A
but
long time.
yeah, I don't understand how it's justifiable. Like you said, it's just gone on way too long. You could argue about whether we should be there in the first place, but either regardless, it's gone on
Like
way too long.
it has like I understand why we originally went over there, to hunt down Osama bin Laden. I get that, and I guess I can understand why they're still there. I'm sure they have some certain agreements with the Afghan government, but and I know they were trying to keep the country out of the Taliban's hands, because the Taliban, after the Soviets got booted out of Afghanistan, the Taliban took over, which we supported
Hmm.
originally, to fight the
Absolutely.
Russians. They took over and institutionalized their, extreme Sharia law, and that's I think that's part of the reason. I'm not a poli sci major or anything like that. I was just a lowly staff sergeant when I was in the army. But you know, I know we're trying to keep it out of the hands of the Taliban. I think that's part of the reason why we're still there. Um, but with this truce that's going on between us and the Taliban, there, which is one of the why Trump was trying to pull everybody out within 18 months, because the US and the Taliban signed a truce, no more hostilities, as long as we had all our troops out within 18 months. But, part of me fears that once we leave, the Taliban's going to take over again, and it's going to go back to the dark ages, essentially. Um,
How do you feel about us trying to prevent that from happening? I mean, because I know one perspective is that, like, these people have to eventually come to a place where they, build their own way of life again,
yeah,
and if we're going to be there, it's just not going to happen. It's going to be, whatever is, US approved, you know.
yeah.
So I get that perspective too. And I also get, we don't want to send it back to the dark ages. So
I mean, just the things they institutionalized, and especially like the treatment of women over there after the Taliban showed up was just appalling. Apparently before the Soviets invaded, I've seen old pictures and stuff. I guess Afghanistan was a pretty modern place.
they had some pretty beautiful cities,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Then Taliban came in and ruined everything, and then ISIS came in after them. I think Taliban was fighting with ISIS though, and I
Mm.
think ISIS, I want to say, has been kicked out of Afghanistan. I'm not sure, but and then ISIS came in, made it worse. Uh,
Do you know, do we have any involvement in ISIS in other areas?
so that's the reason why we went back to Iraq in 2014. It was actually
Yeah.
a funny story. I was in Afghanistan during that time. Um, and towards the end of our deployment, so I was with a petroleum liaison detachment. We were the only subject matter experts within the Middle East, essentially. So we were a 11-man detachment, um, with all NCOs and officers. And what we did was we went around the country, and this was my last deployment before I got out. We went around the country and did like quality assurance on like tactical fuel sites throughout Afghanistan. We'd inspect their sites, we'd write up a full report of like deficiencies, send it to them, stuff like that, track their fuel mileage, uh, audit them for possible pilferage of fuel, which has happened. I actually caught a base who was pilfering about 250,000 gallons and selling it to the Taliban. Um, So we got CID involved, Criminal Investigations Division, and then CIGAR, which I think stands for what did that stand for? Uh, I think CIGAR, Special Inspection General of the Afghanistan Reconstruction. Yeah, CIGAR. And then military police, and it was a whole big thing. But so we went around doing that. And then towards the end of our deployment, that's when ISIS started kicking off in Iraq. So we actually spent the last 6 weeks of our deployment pretty much in Kuwait. We had to go into the middle of the desert in Kuwait. There's about 15, 20 metal shipping containers in the middle of the desert, and we had to go through all of these, and these things were like full to the brim, and piece together an entire tactical fuel site, essentially, like pipes, fittings. We have like 250,000 gallon bags, fuel bags, like really big bags. 250,000, yes.
Wow. Like
Yeah,
giant milk bags
exactly.
or
Yeah,
wine
a
bags.
very, very, very big milk bag. Um,
What?
so we had to piece together an entire tactical fuel site, crate it up, box it up, and then we had to take it to Iraq to the green zone so they could set up a quick fuel site. Um, so it was essentially 3 countries in one deployment that we went to.
Wow. Um, so when did you leave the Middle East?
I left when I leave. It was like mid-October or so, roughly around there.
Of what year?
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
And so what was the state of things in Afghanistan when you left?
So Afghanistan. So granted, there wasn't as many troops there as there was, say, like earlier 2000s or like 2008 when I was there last. Um, Before that, um, we were in the process of transitioning from Operation Enduring Freedom to Operation Inherent Resolve, which was more support based. I don't think there was any like active combat missions, with the exception of maybe like special operations and stuff like that. Most of what we were doing was support roles.
How big was,
The U.S. military as a whole. I'm talking
yeah,
about.
how big was the special operations, or I mean, how many of those folks were in there, would you
Uh,
say?
I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't know, and even if I did,
Okay, you
I
couldn't.
wouldn't be able to tell you.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's a OPSEC thing, and it's probably classified. So.
right. That's super interesting. Um, geez, so okay, so I don't know you from the military. I know you because you're one of my clients. And you've kind of had like a pretty wild year. You're in a completely different place than you were last year about this time.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you have to say about that? Do you mind sharing? Like,
Sure. So yeah, I was working at the US Geological Survey. I was a budget analyst, um, but I'm now retired as of December 31st. Uh, but no, it's so for many years I've been struggling with PTSD and anxiety and depression, um, and recently, well, within like about the last year and a half, hallucinations, and they were just getting worse, uh, to the point where I pretty much couldn't function at work. And my wife, she is a mental health counselor. I'm not going to say where she works. Um, she had suggested that I probably not work anymore, because we've been together for 11 years, and I've always struggled with being around, I guess, the civilian population, either been fired or written up, or and it got to the point where it was just too much. And so I after long consideration and suggestions from my wife and even my own counselor, uh, I thought it's best to resign from that position before something bad happens.
Right. You could see you've been down that road before.
Yeah.
Do you think that the hallucinations are connected to the insomnia?
Um, I can't say for sure. I would say no, because like I said, they started a year and a half ago, maybe more than a year and a half ago. Um, Actually, almost 2 years ago, to be honest. Yeah, it was actually almost 2 years. Um, he, I it has to do with my PTSD for sure,
Mm-hmm.
but stress will exacerbate it. Because I noticed the more stress I was under, the more frequent my hallucinations would get. Um, and like I said, it was, only last year and a half I started exhibiting hallucinations. Um, and it actually took several years before I started exhibiting PTSD symptoms. Uh, the docs described it as delayed onset PTSD, which they see a lot more in like Vietnam vets who are just like now recently retiring or just recently retired, like because they get back home and they go straight to work and work for several decades and stuff, raise families and whatnot, and they don't have time in their life to think about this. And so I started, my second deployment wasn't that bad. I wasn't in a combat role or anything like that. Um, and it wasn't due to my second deployment, but like towards the end of my second deployment, like I started exhibiting some depression, and like when I got home, and then my back was already kind of screwed up, and I was having a lot of back issues, and then eventually ended up having you know pretty serious back surgery, not even a year after coming back. Uh, and I was pretty much laid up in bed, could barely move. Um,
Which in itself is traumatic. I
yeah,
mean,
so I had nothing but time, and like all these feelings and stuff just kind of came and like hit me at once, and it was it was a lot. Most of it being from my first deployment.
um, what types of avenues have you taken um, to see if you can get to the bottom of it? Do you think that it's possible to heal yourself?
um I don't think you'll ever be fully healed. um and I think most people who suffer from PTSD, not just veterans, but everybody, um I don't think most people will ever fully heal, but people will be more resilient to it. That's a big thing they're talking about today, is resiliency, being able to deal with those issues in a positive way, so you can carry on with your life.
But you're not sure that it's possible to like eliminate the anxiety or um, like heal that psychological trauma so that it's not an emotional drain on you. Because I mean, who can think clearly when you constantly feel um, that stress?
Um, I can't speak for everybody. Everybody exhibits PTSD symptoms differently. For me, no, I personally don't think it'll ever go away. I just, I always try to make steps to improve the quality of life I have. Um, and, I've been going to counseling every other week for the last 5 years now. Um, and every session isn't even necessarily about my traumatic experience. Some days I could literally just BS about Star Wars, or talk about how much of a crappy day I had at work. Um, Counseling is a very good tool. It does help a lot. It's nice to just have. It's nice to be able to talk to a third party, an unbiased third party who's there, who's just going to listen. Maybe stuff that you don't want to tell your significant other or somebody in your immediate life.
Right. Right.
Um, and I feel like that's probably going to happen a lot more because of this COVID. Because I know depression is probably at an all-time high. Especially some of these states that have really strict travel regulations or mask regulations. It's hard
Yeah.
on people.
Yeah. Some areas there, I mean, you're not allowed to leave. And if you come back, you have to quarantine, you know? So
Or if you
which,
leave, you get fined. It's
mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
England is like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Who would, where?
I think England is like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I know you have to pass border checkpoints to get from South Dakota to Nebraska.
Really?
Yeah, they're not highly enforced because when I passed one, there was nobody there. It was on a Sunday afternoon. I'm guessing that's why. But um, yeah, and I
Oh no, I've
was
never been to Nebraska.
yeah, I was visiting a business down there, and they said, "Well, just tell them, when you get to the checkpoint, just tell them, where you're going, what business you're going to, and what town, and they shouldn't give you a hard time." And I was like, "Geez,
Wow,
that
I didn't know it was that bad.
happening in America."
You'd think I would have been to Nebraska by now, being from this area.
Yeah, I only
Dakota
go
either.
down there if I have an excuse, but it's a pretty, I don't know. Nebraska's all right with me. It's like a lot of wide open space.
That's pretty much the Midwest in general, I think. I mean,
Well,
Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota.
unless you're in the Black Hills and then
Um,
it's just, there's people everywhere, but I guess not everywhere. That's
you,
not
you've got
fair.
You've got Sioux Falls on one side of the state, Rapid City on the other, and then hundreds of miles of nothing.
Yeah, yeah. You've got to take a long dirt road to get to a lot of places in South Dakota.
Yep.
Yep. Um, I wonder, in your counseling sessions, I mean, do you guys ever talk about like spirituality or faith or anything like that?
Um, so yeah, we've discussed it before. And again, that kind of delves into like the whole resiliency. Spirituality is a big part of resiliency.
Hmm.
Me personally, we don't talk about it this much because my counselor knows that I don't really believe in that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
My things are, more of I guess my hobbies are more of my spirituality.
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
Things that kind of keep me grounded. Like if you can't see the background here, my my shrine to the Sith. I really enjoy my Star Wars. I enjoy riding my motorcycle. And like I've told you before, I'm gonna start getting into woodworking here, just to keep myself busy. And then of course, I have search and rescue, which I absolutely love and volunteer a lot of my time for. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that you're doing that because you don't have a 9 to 5 job anymore. Like something where you can still, because you've got a lot to contribute. And if you were just sitting at home and you didn't, have anything, you didn't have a volunteer position or something like that, like, oh my gosh, that would just be maddening, I think. But
yeah,
um, what about like, you seem like you're a pretty like fact-based person. You like to see, you know, evidence and, that kind of a thing. Um, it just seems like that's how you're oriented. And
yeah,
I just had a guy on my podcast. His name is Sunil Gadsi, and he has a website called Intuitionology. And he has like neurologists and like brain specialists in different fields and all of this stuff who kind of take you through all of the scientific evidence for um, the thing that we call intuition. Like the neurologist that he has on to talk about it is like, well, it's a real thing, and we're going to take you through the science of how it works. And they can show MRIs from like a 2-month old baby using their intuition, or
Huh.
it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of MRIs. But so I went to check, I had him on, so I wanted to check out the website before we talked. And he's got all of these testimonials from people who are like, once I found that, because it's not like a spiritual thing, you know what I mean? He talks
Yeah.
about like, um you have your mind, and some people say follow your heart or whatever, but like also you have your gut. You kind of have like these three minds that make you up as a person. You've got your gut instincts, which is your intuition and your thought processing logical side of yourself, your brain, but then also your heart, which kind of leads you morally and ethically. And it was so interesting to listen to these
Huh.
people. Yeah, he has all these testimonials of people who are like, when I started to think about how intuition has played a role in my life, like when I've made bad choices, like every single time when I think back, like I knew better. I knew it was a bad choice and I still did it, and it came back to bite me in the ass. And
Yeah.
then I'm going through like 6 different scenarios in my head of when that's happened to me.
Yeah.
But then like just on the flip side of it, like, oh, when I have listened to my intuition, then this really awesome thing happened, and it changed my life or whatever. And I'm just like, man, if like we as people can hone that skill, like using your intuition, imagine like how much less stress we would be under. And the Sunil talked about how in order to follow his intuition, he actually had to ruin his relationship with his father because culturally, you're in his family, you're either a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And he did the engineer thing and didn't love it and didn't want to do it anymore. And he realized that he had a real future being an entrepreneur, and he wanted to pursue that. And
Mhm.
that ended his relationship with his dad. He said, he's like, that was my sacrifice to follow my intuition. And he said it turned out to be the most amazing choice he's ever made, because it took him on this huge path. And now 20 years later, he's doing all kinds of stuff.
I'm guessing that ruined his relationship because his father didn't approve of his career choice. You
Mm-hmm.
know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like a whole other thing too. Like when you think about how much we're influenced by other people and what their expectations are, or what like cultural norms are, or family
Mhm.
traditions or whatever, how many of our choices against our own intuition are influenced by that type of stuff.
Yeah. I've been lucky to be raised by parents who never done that. They were more of the, whatever makes you happy, do that. As long as you ain't mooching off of us,
And that's hilarious.
you know. Um, so in that aspect, but I'm really lucky about that. But yeah, there are a lot of different cultural norms. When it comes to occupation and not wanting to, have your parents, your family disapprove of you. You know,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
it's quite strange.
Um, I just like had it in my head what I was gonna say, and then I lost it. Uh, no, it's gone. It's gone now. But I'm going to send you that website. You should check out his website and watch those testimonials. But oh, the reason I brought it up is because he has like a free like 7-day crash course, how to use your intuition. And I'm
Mhm.
on day 7 today because I had to do it after I talked to him.
Yeah.
but it's been pretty groovy, and you get like a free ebook called Gut with it.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm gonna send you that link when we're done here.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely something I should have done. Use my intuition, that is. When I became a budget analyst, because I definitely was not happy in that job. I saw the green bags, in my eyes when I
mhm.
accepted the position, and I could tell you firsthand that money's not everything. If no amount of money in the world is going to make you happy if you're miserable doing what you're doing. Um,
And was
and
your intuition was just screaming at you the whole time, huh?
oh yeah, yeah, pretty much from the first day I started.
Oh
um,
man.
yeah, and it's yeah, finally broke me. It definitely broke me. Uh, so
So, what do you think, like the next time that feeling comes up that says like don't do that or do this thing, are you
well,
gonna are you gonna listen?
you know what, I like to think that I try to make it a habit not to repeat the same mistakes I've already made. Uh, so yeah, I would like to say that I will listen to my intuition or gut next time, but who knows? I don't know. I'm very sporadic.
Yeah, right. And who knows what it's gonna, when it's gonna pop up. That's the thing. You could just be like cruising about your life thinking you know what's going on, and then like all of a sudden you got like this thing like, oh, don't do that. Like maybe an opportunity comes up or something,
Yeah.
but it works the other way too. Like, like sometimes, because I kind of like after I've really thought about this after I talked to that fella and uh how I kind of pictured is like I have like this imaginary friend over here who's like, like every once in a while they'll just pipe up. It's like they're just hanging out, but every once in a while they'll pipe up and they'll be like, why do you say that? Or why do you think that? Or you should talk to that person more, like just this little thing in the back of my head. And I'm pretty sure that's the intuition that he's talking about.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Is it just me? Like, do you feel like that? Like there's like something else that's like it's me, but it's not me. You know what I mean? What I'm saying? I don't know
I
how
I,
to describe it to
I
you.
I think I know what you're saying. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
you're
You have conversations with yourself, and um, whether I can't think of a particular situation, but yeah, I guess it'd be your self-conscious or your consciousness talking to you. Um,
your higher self,
you
maybe?
know, um, it's kind of that depiction of the angel and the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah. A little
um,
bit of that. Yeah.
you know, um, yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I've had a lot of those. Oh, what's the word I'm using? I've had a lot of those. I guess self conversations. you know, um, which ends up leading me down to like potential future outcomes of that decision, scenarios on what could happen, conversations on how that could go. You know, all
Mm-hmm.
before all before this decision ever happens.
Right. You've seen it already play out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you know what the Enneagram is?
The what?
Enneagram. It's like a personality measurement or something like that, but and you're different they have like different assignments to different personality traits, but I know that a 6 in an Enneagram is someone who does exactly what you're describing. Like it's like their superpower. They can play through scenarios, watch it play out before it ever even happens and decide, okay, well, no, I don't want to do that. Or I do want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly that's essentially what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That is like a superpower though. Like to
is it
be able,
though?
I mean, think about it. Like how much well, I mean, it could be your kryptonite too, right? If you know, if it, like if you're a fearful person, you that might be something that causes you to freeze up and not be able to make a decision. But if you are like a goal oriented or, you know, whatever kind of person, it could be a skill that like helps you decide which goals are worthwhile, you know? Like
True. Yeah, that
that's
makes
a
sense.
pretty handy skill to have because like I always think I know what's going to happen and it doesn't go that way. It never
Well,
goes the
you
way I
know,
think.
I've never really thought of it as a skill because it's just kind of something always naturally done.
Hmm.
You
Yeah, but
know.
aren't some skills innate, you know, just part of your nature as a person? You know, we're all different, wired
Yeah,
differently and
yeah. I suppose so. But yeah, I always chalked it up to as overthinking things way too much, like way too much, more than it should be. You
right.
know, because yeah, I'm that kind of person who like decides he wants to do a thing and then will think about future implications of that thing. And yeah, it's like I can see scenarios running through my head of what the outcome could be, as well as conversations, you know, of what I would say depending on that situation play out, like different versions playing out.
Mhm. Mhm, I
It's
do.
I mean, I can't really explain it any better than that, but yeah, that's
I wonder if it's like a skill because I at least I definitely view it as a skill, and I wonder if it's like a thing that you like a skill that you could hone so that instead of it like being a detriment or whatever, like it could be really, really useful. Because like I mean, I could use somebody with that skill. Like if I could just call you up and be like, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing and this is kind of all of the moving pieces of it and what do you think?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, you definitely want to do that and here's why because in like 2 months this is going to happen." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. That would be awesome." You know what I mean? To have somebody that you
it's
could just like call up to like, you know, project for me. That would be amazing, but, yeah, I feel like that's a skill that you could hone.
yeah, like I said, I wouldn't really know anything about honing it because it's something that I've always done and always had, so I've never given any thought to it until literally just now. You know, like I've
I wonder
never
how you
thought
would
about it.
yeah, how would you practice? Like, I wonder if you could use, like, team sports, you know what I mean? Like, just learn all of, like, the players of a team and see if you could predict their season, you know? Read the tabloids to see if any of them get in fights with their girlfriends or something.
I mean, I wouldn't really I don't know if that would be the best example of
What
it
would
because
be a good
that's
exercise?
just more um uh you know learning facts and then trends, or whatever.
Yeah.
Based on these certain facts, here are the trends that I predict with like these football players or something like that.
But what you're
And
talking
which
about
which
is
people which
different.
people actually already do now.
Yeah.
It's fantasy football.
Yeah. Right. Yes, you're right. So what would how would you describe what you do and how if you were to try to practice at it, you know what I mean? Like
uh, God, that's a really tough question. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's I wouldn't even know where to begin on how to practice something like that. It's just kind of it's more of like I don't know, a wherewithal. Um, maybe a little bit of that intuition, gut feeling, and then just me naturally trying to rationalize everything around me,
mhm.
um, of what the what the outcome is, or what it could be, or the potential. What it potentially could be.
Mhm.
Um, these are just things I think about to try to rationalize everything in my life. to try to make sense of it. Um, I think the best way you could do to maybe practice is make a decision on something and then kind of think about what the implications of that decision could do, whether positive or negative, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then eventually make your final decision. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, start small, like, oh, what are we having for dinner? Tacos or spaghetti? Well, let's see. Say, oh, well, Jason doesn't like spaghetti, and the daughter hates taco seasoning. I don't know. you know,
It's
I,
it seems like it's just
it's like a pros and cons in
mhm.
played out in your head, but in more detail.
Yeah. Yeah, like troubleshooting but before the trouble pops up.
Yeah, actually, yeah. That's
Hmm.
yes.
Precognitive troubleshooting? What would you
Pre
call that?
Precognitive troubleshooting. Well, I wouldn't call it precognitive because that,
No.
that that would imply that you already know what the future holds.
Yeah.
Um,
What? I don't know what you would call this, but I do feel like it's a superpower.
I would say, hmm,
Uh,
possible cognitive. No, I don't. Yeah,
troubleshooting's in there somewhere because that's definitely what it is. Huh.
yeah. It's just thinking of it's troubleshooting for.
Preemptive troubleshooting?
Oh yeah, actually that might work.
Okay. Hmm.
Or in the military, we every Monday we always have to go to the motor pool and do basic level care on the vehicles. We call it preventive care or preventive maintenance checks and services. Uh, you do all these little checks on your vehicles, like check the fluid levels, blinkers, stuff like that. Little things, so they don't turn into bigger things later down the road. Because it's actually been proven that PMCSing your vehicle is cheaper in the long run
Mm-hmm.
than waiting for a big catastrophic thing. Um, it's you know maybe your preventive, maybe in a preventive maintenance kind of way. Um,
Mm.
no, well, no. Now that I'm saying it, that doesn't really make much sense.
Well, it kind of does because, like you said you start with something small, like dinner. Like look at the small details of your life and what's your, like you said, your intuition or whatever telling you about those details and how are they contributing to the bigger picture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, I couldn't tell you how to practice that because it's just something I have always done,
Mm-hmm.
always
Hmm.
done. Um, well, oh, yeah, no, pretty much always done.
Like you can remember being a little kid and thinking exactly the same way.
Well, that I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, honestly. I
I know
couldn't
who
tell
can
you.
remember that far back.
I mean, I can remember childhood stuff. I just don't remember if I thought that way.
Because yeah, if yeah,
Talking about,
you huh?
oh, sorry, yelling at the dog.
But she's so cute. She doesn't deserve to be yelled at. She should get
No,
away with everything. No. Oh man. Um, I don't know. That's interesting. I think that my superpower might be super adaptability.
you know,
I think that might be what it is. Because I, I'm pretty okay in almost every situation,
yeah.
you know?
I I was about to say, well, until recently, I always thought I was pretty adaptable, but but I guess not. I mean, I guess in real world, and I don't know. Uh, it's hard to word it.
I think
Maybe not
that
occupation wise, but uh, real world scenarios. I guess I'm pretty adaptable.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the whole like occupation thing for you was like your subconscious was like, I am not, we are not doing this. I am not doing this. And just made it miserable for you until you finally came into alignment with your subconscious and got the hell out of there. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know that that's an adaptability issue, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I've always, I've moved around a lot, you in fact, here, this is living here is the longest Maggie and I have ever lived in one place.
Wow.
We've lived in three different states over the past 11 years. Um, and we've moved, oh goodness, we've moved 6 or 7 times in the 11 years we've been together. Um,
Wow.
so I mean, we're probably going to stick around here for quite some time, quite a long time. Um, so yeah, this is the longest we've ever been here. We moved here in June of 2017. So
So almost 4 years.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and it seems like you guys have put down some roots here. I know that she's really passionate about her work, you
yeah,
know. Um,
she loves her job, and me, I wouldn't mind moving. We've talked about moving to Texas, many years down the road, just because they have a lot of great benefits for disabled veterans and stuff like that, um, and it's just we've always thought about it, but it wouldn't be for a long time, if ever. But like I said, yeah, we've actually, in the 3.5 years or so we've lived here, we put in some roots here already and made some actual connections. And I've got search and rescue here, which I absolutely love. So
mhm. Yeah. I don't know. And me personally, I'd be sad to see you guys go because I love you guys both.
we love you too.
You're one of
But
my favorite
winter
couples.
sucks.
Huh?
I said winter suck though. That's
Yeah.
literally my main reason for not wanting to be here anymore is snow.
It takes
I don't like snow anymore. I
mm,
used to when I was a kid, because I grew up here. I grew up in the Black Hills. Uh, but the snow, man, uh, God, I hate the snow.
it takes a really hardy person to like thrive in this environment. You know what I mean? And like I have a feeling like the older I get, the more I feel like I'm not cut out for this. I
I've had I've had a dry and bloody nose for like the last 3.5 years straight. I can't fix it ever since I moved here, and then I started getting allergies once I moved back here. I didn't have any issues before, but yeah, dry skin, dry bloody nose, constantly chapped lips.
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, I know I could fix all those things with lotion, chapstick, and like Vaseline in the nose, but that's too much work, man.
I'm not doing it. I know, like I just like and you could like I'm looking at my image in the screen here and my forehead's all shiny. Like all I do all the time is just like try to maintain some sort of because otherwise like I'll just electrocute myself with static electricity. It's crazy. And for the listeners, like this is why you don't move to the Black Hills, okay? It's terrible here. You don't want to live here.
It's dry. It's a lovely place. The Black Hills are lovely. Don't
No,
get me
shh,
wrong.
it's terrible. Nobody wants to live here. It's really, really
Oh, you just
awful.
no. Okay, you just gotcha.
Oh man. No,
I wouldn't
all
mind
of the
moving to western Wyoming either. I think that'd be a cool place. I just like the mountains. I just want to be close. Well, part of me wants to be close to mountains, but
yeah.
even though there's snow there, but I know.
But what my thing is like I want to live close to mountains. I don't want to live in the mountains. You
Yeah,
know, that's where
yeah.
I'm at.
Which I guess here is pretty close. I mean, it's only like 3 hours to the Bighorns from
Mhm.
Rapid City. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
if you need a
that's a
good
nice thing to get with it.
but if you just need a, like a hiking fix, you can get out in the hills and so beautiful, and I
Oh
appreciate it
yeah.
a lot, and I'm really glad that it's there. I don't I used to live in the hills, and it was like dark all the time. I was surrounded by trees all the time. The sky is so much smaller in the hills, you know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
I think that's why I don't want to live like in the mountains or in the
Right.
hills. I want to live next to them so I can go and enjoy them. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Wyoming, it's just so open, and then the mountains are right there, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. That would be a good place. I like Texas too, though. I like hot, you know? I could be hot and it wouldn't bother me. Even if it was, people are like, "Oh, you say that, but if you had to live like that year round, you wouldn't like it." And I'm like, "You don't know me."
Yeah. Yeah. I personally would rather be cooler than hot, but
Mhm.
you know, I think the older I get, I just start hating snow and cold more.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, Texas has different climates too. Like you could have cooler weather like on the Gulf, if you wanted to, like next
Yeah.
to the ocean.
The Gulf is hot and humid.
Yeah, but is it in the winter time? Does it cool down
No,
in It doesn't cool
no.
down in the winter time.
I mean, it cools down. Yeah,
Okay.
it gets chilly. I mean, nothing like here, but
Yeah.
it gets 30s, 40s,
Okay.
which
See,
is doable.
yeah. Do they get snow in Texas in the Gulf?
Uh,
I
if they
wouldn't
do, it's very, very, very rare.
I was gonna say I
Uh,
wouldn't think so. That's There she
there
is.
has been instances where it has snowed in Florida and stuff like that. I've heard
Yeah.
of stories, but
This
what's
is
up?
a
Get down,
She
please.
wants
Get
to
down.
podcast with you.
She wants to go outside and go potty. Is what she's trying to
Oh.
tell me.
Well, we are coming up on an hour, so I know that you got stuff that you have to do a little bit later.
Yeah, later.
Um, okay. You're not in a rush?
No,
Okay. Okay. Well, if you want to take a little break and go step off and let
Yeah,
her go potty.
can I take her out real quick and I'll be right back?
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
perfect.
Let me put you
Okay.
on mute here for a second.
Okay. All right. Oh, and you got your vape. See, I'm not the only one vaping. Right on.
Yeah, I do CBD oil from time to time for pain management.
Oh, how is it? How does that work?
I don't know. I vape it and I feel a little bit better than I did before.
That's all that matters right there. That, and it's legal now. Now we can
Well,
actually do it.
I mean, technically, it's not legal. It's just uh, uh, the district attorney said he's not going to prosecute it because he thinks it's absolutely absurd that CBD is illegal.
I thought that they had federally like
Oh,
deregulated or
yeah.
whatever,
Okay. Yeah, you're
CBD.
right. Yeah.
But
I
it wasn't
think
that long
or no,
ago.
was that hemp? I don't know about CBD. I know it was hemp.
I thought it was CBD, but did you hear about how Nate oh damn it, now I forgot his last name. The MMA fighter. Um
There's a lot of them.
no, hold on. Nick? Which brother was it? Anyways, the MMA fighter after a fight was kicking back at the press conference afterwards and was hitting his CBD vape.
Oh,
And
um, was it Sean? No, it wasn't
n-
Sean O'Malley.
no, no, no. There's two brothers that are fighters, and it was one of the brothers.
I know who you're talking about. I can't remember the
Is
name
it
of.
Nate or Nick? Why can't I
Yes, is it Nick?
remember?
It wasn't Nick Diaz, was it?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, 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 yeah. Diaz, one of the Diaz brothers, but I don't remember which one. But that was messed up. So, yeah, so he ended up getting a huge fine. I think, I don't know if he had to forfeit his belt that he won in that fight.
CBD oil, yeah. So
It
it's
was
a little absurd.
it was drama for no reason. No
Yeah.
reason at all. Pretty ridiculous. No, I don't know.
It
uh,
helps. I mean, I'm not. It doesn't. It doesn't. it doesn't get rid of 100% of the pain, but um, it does help. It helps relax the muscles. I think in my, just my own personal experience. And yeah, it takes that like pain level from like a 4 down to a 2.
And they recommend CBDs for like anxiety and stuff like that too, I think. Do you notice
Yeah.
any of those like mood elevating aspects of it? I haven't I've tried a CBD cream for my back, but not like
Have you noticed anything with the cream?
um well, it was like in an icy hot formula, which
Uh-huh.
was so immediately it was really
Like,
relaxing. Yeah, but it seemed like because I've used those types of products before and it seemed like it lasts a lot longer. You know what I'm saying?
huh,
Because,
yeah,
and probably, how you said that it relaxes the muscles. I think it has to do with that. But it's just, yeah, it was a topical that you just put right over the area. So, but I haven't vaped it or like ingested. Like I know some people who take like CBD tinctures,
yeah,
like a few drops in the mouth or whatever, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like other than like pain relief, do you notice any other effects?
So yeah, I've noticed that it does, and like I said, this could be a whole placebo effect going on. I don't know, but I've noticed that it does tend to lower my anxiety. Um, it tends to calm me down a little bit, as well as relieve pain. So I mean, there could possibly be something to that.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, it could all just be a placebo effect. Who knows?
Yeah, but if it's whether it's real or it's the placebo effect, it doesn't matter if it helps, right? You know?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
There's this doctor wrote a book. His name's Dr. Joe Dispenza. He wrote a book called You Are the Placebo. And he goes through different studies and stuff that have been done on the placebo effect. That's really, really interesting. It might
Huh.
be a little woo-woo for you though, because I mean, he's a doctor, but he does get like spiritual, about
Oh,
it. But I mean, either way, like he's got good science in there. It was really interesting, really interesting. Um, because like Joe Rogan uses that same argument about the placebo effect with psychedelics. They're like, people are like, well, if you do a psychedelic, you're not really seeing anything. It's just that, your brain's reacting to this chemical and it's not really, it's a hallucination. It's not really there. And Joe's whole point is like, well, so, like, what's the difference? If you have the experience and you're able to, like, because he uses psychedelics, I think, kind of medicinally, I feel like, or spiritually,
Joe
or
Rogan. Yeah, that one surprised me. Yeah,
yeah. So, so his whole point was like, if I get a benefit out of it, does it matter if it's a placebo or if it's not?
that is very true. Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, but yeah, that's a really good point. Um, yeah, I guess it really doesn't matter. If you have positive effects from it, whether it actually does anything or not, who cares? You had a positive experience doing it.
Yeah, and if you think about it, even if it's a placebo, like we're talking about anxiety, even if it's a placebo, if you feel like your anxiety is lessened, that means that chemically in your body, you're also getting less of those stress hormones because you are, the thought process sends or relays information to
Is that
your organs.
cortisol? Maybe
And
I think.
what's that?
I think cortisol is that the stress
Yeah,
hormone?
cortisol, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oxytocin, serotonin, all of those things are influenced by our autonomic nervous system, which tells our body whether or not we can relax and go about our business or if we're in fight or flight mode or whatever. And I was talking to another one of my clients about this. She's gastro. I I
A
always
GI
say
doctor,
yeah,
gastrointestinal.
yeah. She's a GI doctor, but she also did a fellowship for holistic medicine. And
Okay.
she was talking about like how sometimes, especially with PTSD people, actually, I'm glad we're talking about this, but that um, your autonomic nervous system gets hijacked by, a traumatic experience or a brain trauma or something of that nature, where you get stuck in that fight or flight mode. So you're constantly, no matter what physical environment you're in, you could be at home sleeping in your bed, safe in your house, your body literally thinks that it needs to run from danger. Um, and and then she was talking about how that disconnect between what's actually in reality, you're laying in bed and safe in your home, and what your physiology is telling you, that disconnect between not mind and body can cause all kinds of interruptions within the brain, that cause you know things from like nerve damage to gastrointestinal issues to all kinds of stuff, because there's
That
a, a miscommunication in the relay of information.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I know because I pretty much experience that all the time. Um,
That's how you're living, is in that constant fight or flight.
it's gone down a little bit, and it comes and goes. You know, people with PTSD doesn't exhibit like symptoms as hard 24/7, or depression or anything like that. Um, it comes and goes, and again, there's external factors that can exacerbate that, or make it come out more. Like with my job, just the pressure and the stress of that job uh, made my symptoms that I already had a lot worse, to the point where I was having hallucinations, and like sleep paralysis and flashbacks, and I mean it got really worrisome, because I didn't really have any flashbacks until you know almost a couple years ago, or not flashbacks but hallucinations, sorry. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'd never had those, and and honestly, I know it sounds dumb. Like at first, I thought it was my house. I thought my house was haunted. You know, because I was seeing people. I was seeing people that weren't there, um, and hearing voices that wasn't there, and I'm like, my house is haunted.
Wow.
Maggie never noticed anything.
Mm.
Ava, my dog, never experienced anything. So it's like, well, maybe I'm just crazy. um, and yeah, it really worried me. Like I really thought I was losing my mind, to the point where my counselor was like, "You need an MRI done because you could have a brain tumor." So I did. I went and had an MRI done just to rule out the fact that I didn't have a tumor or a cyst on my brain, which came back clear. So thankfully for that. So now I just know I'm crazy. So I was prescribed some antipsychotics, but I have yet to take them, honestly, because I'm afraid to.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I already have like high triglycerides and high cholesterol, um, and this medication will increase that, and it will. I think weight gain is one of the other side effects, and I'm already like 275, 280 pounds. I don't need any more weight on me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, I'm muscular.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you're crazy. Has it, I mean, I feel like it's it's all circumstantial. You know what I
Yeah, it's
mean?
it's it's not crazy, but there was some psychosis involved, and like just because somebody's diagnosed psychotic doesn't necessarily mean they're a psycho, if that makes
Mhm.
any sense.
Mhm.
There are people, if you look at the DSM manual, there's people who exhibit psychotic symptoms, or at least what's described in the DSM, but aren't out there murdering people or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I did. I do feel there was a few times where I did enter a state of psychosis. Just with the extreme paranoia. Like I said, seeing things, hearing things. Even had a couple sensations of you know uh, uh, feeling things, like somebody was touching me. Uh, and even smelling. Like I had a scent hallucination, which apparently is a thing also, that wasn't there.
What was the scent?
So not this Sturgis rally last August, but the one before that. I was at the Seven Dust concert at the Iron Horse Saloon, and I thought I smelled rocket exhaust. Um,
Is that a distinct?
it's a very distinct smell.
Mhm.
Um, I thought I smelled rocket exhaust. Ended up being weed once I could actually like figure out my surroundings. It was just somebody smoking weed near me. But I swear to God, I thought I smelled rocket exhaust, and this is this is when I realized that certain smells trigger my PTSD, which I didn't know. Because I've always tried to avoid this. Actually, the closest I can describe the smell of rocket exhaust is. Do you remember playing with cap guns as a kid? Get the little toy gun, and they have those little round red caps that you push in.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like the smell of those caps once you fire them. It's almost
Mhm.
exactly what rocket exhaust smells like. At
Okay.
least that's my opinion. Um, so if you can think of that, like, I don't know, black powdery, kind of weird. I don't know. That in my mind,
Sure.
that's what they smelled like.
Yeah, sulfur, but also gunpowdery at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah, maybe smokeless powder. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so I've always tried to avoid that. But yeah, I thought I smelled that in the crowd, and it was a big crowd. And like I instantly went back to Afghanistan. Like it was, I can't describe it. It's like if everything around me vanished, like the people, the concert, the crowd around me, and I was in the desert. Like it was the weirdest fucking thing. It's like my eyes didn't let me see what was actually there, you know. And it took a few seconds to actually realize where I actually was before like everything came back. Like it was it was really weird. It
Was
was,
your like when you realized, 'cause so it sounds like you like realized what was happening, that it was a flashback? Is that kind of how you came out of it or
yeah, like you know, it, and it doesn't last that long. At least this didn't. Like your mind is still, I guess, kind of conscious, when it's happening. Like, and I just realized that like this this isn't right. I'm at a concert right now. Um, but yeah, it was. God, it's so hard to describe if you've never experienced it. Like that was the first time I experienced a scent actually triggering something,
Mhm.
um, or at least what I thought was a scent. And yeah, it was weird.
It's interesting to me uh that scent popped up to you when you were in a venue surrounded by so many people.
Yeah,
Like that's
hundreds.
really, I mean, psychologically or intuitively or whatever. Like, was there anything going on there? Like anything else going on at that concert that you were like uncomfortable with?
I mean, just the crowd. I don't really like to be in crowds too much, but I really wanted to see this band.
Hmm.
And I usually make that sacrifice. Like when Corn came, one of my bands I've always wanted to see. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
go see. You know, um,
So,
yeah, I don't really like to be in crowds that much, but when I was enjoying the music. I was fairly comfortable.
hmm,
So the crowd wasn't bothering me too much in this particular instance.
right,
Uh, yeah, no, I can't think of anything like disturbing or anything out of the ordinary
right.
that would cause that.
Yeah. Because it's really well, and it's interesting too because scent is s- I forget exactly what the science is, but scent and memory are like inextricably linked. Like, uh, dang it, I'm blanking on what the article was that I was reading, but they were talking about how um, babies use scent, to kind of gauge, what the mood is, I guess,
Hmm.
like with their mothers, like or just like how our olfactory glands are connected to all of these different brain centers.
That's what it was called. Olfactory hallucination. That's what they call
Yeah,
it. Yeah, there we go.
yeah. So it's just interesting that you know, perceived, I don't want to say hallucinate, but you perceived the smell and then because it might have just been the weed, but the way that it hit your nose, your brain immediately interpreted it as a threat. Rocket, I would think that, rocket exhaust means a threat, you know?
Well, for the enemy.
Yeah. Combat is happening. Yeah. Huh. And then yeah, it brought you back to that to
I
the
know.
desert.
It was a weird sensation. I didn't really know what to make of it.
Mhm.
So, like I said, it was weird in the fact that like everything around me disappeared, and I literally was standing in the middle of Afghanistan, like all like noises from the concert and everything. Everything disappeared, and
Wow.
I was. It was like I was living a waking dream. It was a yeah, it was a waking dream, uh,
Wow.
wide awake dream.
Yeah, I wonder what the mechanism is that's happening in the brain when that happens. For your mind to be so strong as to like block out all of your other senses and that be like, the only sensory input is this memory of the desert. Were there people when when you like flash back to Afghanistan, were there people
I
in that
honestly, I honestly can't remember. To tell you the truth, I
Mhm.
remember, I remember the desert. I remember Afghanistan. I remember the mountains in the background. Um, I don't remember people.
Mhm. And it
Couldn't
was
tell you
brief. It
honestly.
was real brief.
It was very brief, yeah,
Yeah.
like few seconds, you know.
Hmm.
But those few seconds almost, feel like several minutes.
Yeah. Have you looked into like all the different kinds of treatments that they're coming out with now for PTSD, like microdosed MDMA therapy, or I know that there's a fella in town, Dr. Manlove, that
Oh,
does,
I've heard of him. Yeah.
yeah, he does
Um,
ketamine treatments.
yeah. He is. He he is psychologist,
He's
psychiatrist.
a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because when I used to work at the VA, I used to work at medical records, incoming medical records. So any like care in the community, outside of VA care for veterans, like their medical records, like came to my office. And that's actually how I know of his name because a lot of veterans, you know, have gone to this doctor. Um,
And I know that ketamine is has been really, really successful in treating anxiety and depression, but also PTSD, I believe. And I know that
I've
there's
heard about
like,
that.
huh?
Um, I've heard about that, and then there's a new one that the VA is um, doing research on right now. They're not, it's not widespread, uh, and they've only done it to a few veterans, including, oh, what was this? Including one of Medal of Honor recipients, one of the younger guys, one of the newer Medal of Honor recipients. Um, I think it's like Botox injected to like one of the glands somewhere in the neck, and they've been seeing like phenomenal results, better than anything they've tried before. Like instantly, PTSD, depression, everything gone immediately.
From
Gone.
Botox injections.
Yeah, I think it was Botox, or yeah, I think it's Botox.
I'm gonna
Uh,
look this up.
yeah, look it up. Don't quote me on it, but I'm
No, no, no.
pretty sure it's
Yeah,
Botox.
I'm sure I'm going to be able to find something. So Botox to treat PTSD. Okay. Okay. Um, that's super interesting because I've heard of Botox to treat headaches. I know about that,
Yeah,
but
it goes into like one of the glands in the neck or something, or maybe somewhere near. Um, but yeah, oh God, I'm having such a brain fart right now. One of the Medal of Honor recipients has done it, and he said it's helped immensely. He said like it's like PTSD symptoms just like diminish like almost immediately.
mm. Well, this is from Fox News. It says the headline is Doctor says injection can cure PTSD in veterans, and cure is in quotations. But a federally approved injection is offering new hope to veterans suffering from post traumatic stress disorder. Um, the injection, which takes approximately 15 minutes to administer, has led to dramatic improvements. Um, Hold on, they're going through to describe what PTSD is, but I'm looking for what they're injecting. Okay, so yeah, it's injecting into a collection of nerves in the neck known as the stellate
Uh,
ganglion.
yep, that sounds right.
These nerves are connected to various parts of the brain, including the amygdala, which are thought to be associated with PTSD. And one theory suggests, let's see, that the under massive stress, the level of the of nerve growth factor or NGF in his or her system increases. NGF prompts the growth of new sympathetic nerves, which release a hormone called neuronep. I can never say this word. I know that this is when we were talking about the autonomic nervous system. Uh, neuropinephrine or ephrin, neuropinephrine.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Sure. Underlines the fight or flight response in the body and directly increases heart rate and blood pressure. Yep. Okay, so far this one doctor has treated 65 patients from 25 states and one person from New Zealand. The injection is approximately $1,000 covered by his nonprofit, Chicago Medical Innovations. In order to keep performing the procedure, the organization needs donations. Oh man. So this is pretty cool. This guy has a whole clinic where this is what he does. His name is Lipov. Lipov.
Sounds promising.
Yeah, and I wonder how, hello buddy. I wonder how you get into his clinic, you know?
Yeah.
Or if he could give the protocol to a doctor here that would be willing to do it.
I was about to say the VA is testing it right now, but
Okay.
you know the VA won't make it widespread for several years.
I wonder what the process is to get involved in their study, in their tests.
I'm not sure.
Oh man. That's something to look into though. Because I feel like when you're in constant fight or flight, like anything is worth a try, you know?
Yeah, I'd give away my possessions. I would give away my, VA disability money to to live a normal life, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
to be normal. Like, I mean, I never cared about the disability money to begin with. I mean, it took me years to even go file for a disability claim because I always felt that there are other veterans who need it more than me and who are more deserving than me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it took me a long time to actually go file for it. It was at the behest of many of my doctors and my psychiatrists and everything that I probably should go
Mm-hmm.
get it done. But yeah, I mean, if I could have something that could just straight up cure PTSD, that'd be amazing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
stressful, it's draining, it's depressing.
yeah.
It sucks always having to be hyper vigilant, be on
C-
guard.
We got to get you in on one of those studies. I would take any any experimental anything, if it meant that I could have my own mind back.
Yeah, so it's tough. But at the same time, where there's PTSD, at least in my case, you also have post traumatic growth, I guess, too. PTSD doesn't always have to be a bad thing or a negative thing. Um, I know from my experiences in the military, have made me succeed far more than I ever thought possible in myself. I was the first person in my family to ever graduate from college. I mean, as much as I didn't like the job, I was a freaking budget analyst. I mean, can't really be can't really be that stupid to do that position.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
the experience gave you a lot of like self-reliance and self confidence for sure, right? Like, oh, I can do things, you know. But also I think that there's growth to be had in, processing through traumatic events too.
yeah,
It's hard when it's a violent traumatic event, but even that be going through that experience is a learning experience.
yeah. I mean, they do have that like exposure therapy, where you constantly have to relive those moments to basically desensitize yourself to it.
Yeah.
Um, and I heard that helps, but I honestly haven't I haven't gained up the courage to do that yet.
I I'm sorry, but I have really strong feelings about that. My mom has PTSD and they thought for I think about 5 years that that would be the right treatment for her.
Though for certain science stuff.
And that it never helped a bit. That that was one thing that I can honestly say was detrimental for her. It's like any progress that she had made, she just um, regressed. You know, um, and it wasn't until she kind of got off. She did take those medications that they gave her. Um, and they messed her up. They messed her up for a long time, and it wasn't until she got off of those and just within like the last few years she's gained I would say a sense of self-reliance. That's really what it is. Like she's realized like I'm the only person that can fix this. Doctors can poke me and prod me and give me all these drugs and, make me relive all of these experiences over and over and over again, but I'm the one that has to change the way that my brain is wired to think about them. She's in a long process of reprogramming her brain. That's what she's doing right now.
And it's tough to do. I haven't figured it out. I try to think I've figured it out, but I haven't.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. There's so many different approaches to you can go the like clinical
Grandpa,
mental.
turn your hotel computer.
Okay. You can go the whole clinical
Ta-da!
route, or you can um hold on
I'm
one
taking
second, one second.
pictures.
Gave up my phone. Gave up custody of my phone and let him have it so he can go take pictures.
Small person.
Yeah, that's right. Uh so yeah, I was just saying like some people find that just counseling is what helps them kind of work through it, just being able to talk about it openly like you said with somebody who's not like emotionally involved. They don't know you personally, you know. Other people find a lot of relief from the pharmaceutical drugs, you know. But
Yeah.
other people, they go into like, personal development and self-help and that kind of stuff. And other people end up going the spiritual route, whether it be like new age hippies or, Catholicism or whatever it
Yeah.
is that, jives for them. But people have healed themselves in a lot of different ways, you know?
No, granted, like kind of going back into spirituality, I've always kind of been an atheist, but lately I've been kind of delving into Norse paganism a little bit.
Mm, mhm.
Uh, not necessarily in the aspect of believing that, Odin and Thor and Freya and all them were like real beings, but, there's some aspects and some life lessons that you can learn from those figures. Those figures represent something. Um,
Types,
and
yeah.
I and, I, and I've kind of been delving into Norse paganism a little bit.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah,
Right, right. I like
um,
paganism a lot. I think that there's so much valuable information and wisdom from those belief systems that are truly valuable today, um, that I think could help people keep a good moral center because I feel like human beings today are just taught that they have to compromise, compromise, compromise all the time, you know?
when you could easily just sacrifice a person to the gods, it
You
just
know, it would just be so much easier. But yeah, like it because there's a different mentality that comes with that belief system, you know? Um, when the Germans moved into Russia after Catherine the Great took over, um, the Russians were terrified of the Germans because the German folk were like gnarly, hardcore workers, like their whole attitude was like, we're not going to complain about what needs to be done. We just get it done. Like that was their whole attitude. So they worked all the time from morning to night. And, at this point, the majority of uh, the Russians, on the countryside were like, really, it was, lordships and serfdom at that point, so Russians were, I mean, this is like kind of the height of their, um, what are we talking about? Like czarist rule, and so they were really pampered and spoiled, and here come these like rough people who are just like very like factual and logical and rational, and that's what they did, like um it was because of how they their culture that they came from. It was completely different, and that's, I think that different spiritual belief systems create different types of folks, so um like the Vikings, their women were like, hardcore. Their men left.
was about to- well, not only that, I mean, yeah, men left, but women did too. Women raided with them. They went
Oh yeah.
to go a Viking, which is actually what it means to go a Viking is basically a raider who goes out, or raider or an explorer who goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So even women or shield maidens
Mm-hmm.
would go out and raid with them.
Yeah, and that had a huge part to do with their belief systems.
And women could divorce their guys in the Norse culture. Um,
Yeah,
very
well,
simply.
yeah. Didn't they like spit on them?
No, it was
How'd they do
well, at
it?
least
I'm thinking
what
of
I've
some.
read was it was super simple. It was find a couple of witnesses, and then the woman just says, "I'm divorcing my husband," and that was literally it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. I think I'm thinking about an African tribe. They like dance around their husband 3 times and spit on him, and that's it. They're done.
like Ace Ventura when nature calls, like they spit on you to show affection.
I know it's the opposite. Get the fuck out of my house. That's what it is.
I mean, that makes sense. Spitting on
Yeah,
somebody is pretty derogatory. So,
yeah. I know I've always been like really fascinated with religion, but I haven't ever been like a spiritual person, but I just know that there's reasons that these stories have all been no matter what the religion is, there's a reason that these stories have been passed down generation after generation and considered valuable, and it's because there's like unequivocal human truths in those stories.
well, yeah, it was a way. Well, one, it was a way to explain the unexplained. They didn't have the know-how, the science, or technology that we have today. And two, it was to teach the next generation. Like these stories, religion, whatever religion you even want, it doesn't matter. Name one. These religions were meant to guide people how society wants them to live. Ethically, morally, um, spiritually. And it was meant to essentially train people how society or their society feels they should be.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm. Yeah, like how to obey the rule of the, or the rule of law, or the law of the land is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, like Hammurabi's code. Um, well, no, that's not a religion. That's more of rules laid out. But like Christianity, look at Christianity. Look at the
Well,
look at the Roman Catholic Church.
there's a reason for the saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. You know, that's like back then, if you didn't do as the Romans did, you got your hand cut off or something. So there better be a code of ethics that you have to follow and a belief system to keep everybody in line, because if they don't have the beliefs intact that justify the behavior, then you have a whole unruly society. So you better have them all aligned with the same thing.
That's and one of the main problems with that is, like, say for example, the Bible has been changed so many different times, like wording and whatnot, the verbiage, a ridiculous amount of times. Like, who knows what was actually originally in the Bible. It's one of the things that appealed to me about, I'm I'm probably gonna mispronounce this, asatru asatru, which is, it means like true faith in the Aesir gods, that Norse paganism, Oda, Freya, Loki, all them. Um, one thing I loved about the Viking culture is that they did not have a written religion. Their religion is passed down in sagas, tales, to the next generation, and stories. Uh, they never wrote it down.
Hmm.
You know, I find that really really interesting. That you know don't in fact, pretty much most of the written stuff they do have on their religion and stuff like that is coming from other people who visited culture, like monks and stuff,
Who
who
didn't
who
really necessarily understand the
yeah,
the
and monks were the ones who wrote down these, basically their observations.
Mhm.
Um, Vikings didn't have any religion, written religion. You
Mhm.
um, and I think, and it's starting that religion is actually starting to come back now. We can see it, and that word I just horribly mispronounced. And it's, I've been looking into it, and it's still the same way. They don't have a written book on the religion. You know?
Mhm. Just the stories that people have finally written down.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, these stories, the tales, how do you live your life? It's all passed down, by the elders to the younger generation.
Mhm.
Really fascinating.
Well, there's value in that because then it's not an art like a some arbitrary figure is the middleman between you and your faith. When you're being
Yeah,
told the stories from your grandfather or your father or your mother, they're putting their own emotion and feeling into that story, and it's
right.
much more real and alive, you know.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always thought it weird that Christians, the Christianities, they symbolize the horrible torture device as their symbol. Like, why would you worship your deity's death?
Well,
Like, it
because
sounds
at
horrible.
at its core, the Catholic Church is a gaslighting blood cult. They
Yeah,
they gaslight all of their parishioners and congregation, into fearing what could be a really beautiful relationship with your creator, and telling you that if you don't abide by the rules and regulations set forth by, these anointed people, then you're going to suffer in eternity.
yeah, and and yeah, it's like that now. But so my major is actually in history. Um, Early Christianity. I'm talking about
Like the
shortly after,
Gnostics and stuff.
like Jesus was killed, was brutally murdered. You know, um, early Christians were complete pacifists, 100% pacifists. Um, they decided to be more aggressive because of the Romans were persecuting them so much, and they needed to protect themselves. Um, and that's when they decided to start fighting back. And then, essentially, early Christians were barbarians, man. Because you got a lot of converts from Rome. I think it was Constantine who was, in, you know, made Christianity a religion with the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
And then you have the Gauls, the Germanic people who were converted and stuff like that. That's where saints and stuff came along. Saints were, you know, them trying to convert the people. Christians were having a hard time converting people, and that's essentially how like saints came along because you
Mhm.
know they're like, oh, you got this guy Thor, huh? Well, we've got this angel Saint Michael who was a
Mhm.
warrior and stuff like that, and uh,
Mhm.
and that's kind of how they came about. But yeah, like you have all these very warlike cultures who became Christians. So you can, I mean, throughout early Christian history, like you can see that barbarism
Yeah.
in them. The way they tortured and executed, and hell, even like the early Crusades and stuff. It was actually the Muslims who were the ones who were trying to preserve art and culture and stuff like that. They preserved a lot of uh, Christian art and culture during the Crusades,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was actually the Christians who were the ones who were super barbaric,
Oh
you know.
yeah, they went around and and pillaged everything,
Yeah, I mean,
everything.
there's kind of been a role reversal now, at least with extreme, uh, you know, well, a bit of a role reversal now, because you typically see more extreme, terroristic, like Muslim folks than you do like Christian,
Yeah.
typically.
But it's
Um,
interesting how the US has really harnessed that, like how you said we were kind of responsible for the Taliban taking over in the first place, back way back when. Um, it's interesting how the state power always takes advantage of religious zealotry, whether it be the Christians during the Crusades or back when they were stamping out the pagans. Those
yeah,
are those early Christians that because at first they tried to convert the pagans, and that's how, we got Jesus's birthday on the 25th of December and all of this, all of that
yeah,
was,
exactly. A lot of our holidays are based off pagan
yes,
holidays.
yeah,
Christmas was the
yep.
winter solstice.
Easter and the vernal equinox and all of that, that was an attempt to bring people in. But at some point, if your religion is preaching bullshit and people actually have a connection to their spirituality through, like you said, through oral traditions and ritual, which is why the Catholic Church brought in, all of these Catholic rituals to begin with. Eventually they're going to call bullshit on your new religion, and they're not going to be having it. And you're not going to be able to convert everyone that you need to fall in line. And so that's when it starts getting violent. And the state, no matter it be the Roman state or the German state or the US states, like the state always uses zealotry to push, state agenda. It's just so interesting to watch it.
My one of my history professors called it the big C and the little C, the big church and the little church. You got your big church, the visible church, where you got your sermons and your practitioners and your preaching, whatever it is. Hold on, stop, Ava, stop. Sorry. Uh, um, and then you got the little C, the behind the scenes, the puppet masters, if you will, the ones controlling the state figureheads and
Hmm.
pulling strings and the politics involved within the church.
Yeah.
Um, it's yeah, it's really fascinating how much control uh, early Catholics had on the known world at the time.
Hmm. Yeah. And then when you look like further down the road and, as, this empire starts to spread, it plants seeds in England and eventually that turns into the British Empire. And they go, get into China and have, hands in the opium trade, and they get into, um, I think it was Cecil Rhodes that was responsible for bringing opium into China, and then other
That's a
other terrible, huh?
he's a terrible man.
He's a terrible man, and now people say, well, they're a Rhodes scholar,
Scholar,
so
yeah, uh-huh.
yeah, it's disgusting.
Dude,
Um,
Cecil Rhodes was a horrible human being. I don't know why there's still a Rhodes
tell
Scholar.
my listeners about Cecil Rhodes, because this subject hasn't ever come up on the podcast before.
It's been a while. I'll try to remember as much as possible, but he was basically the main guy essentially for the diamond trade down in Africa, like De Beers or whatever. I can't
Yep.
remember exactly. De Beers or is it nonsense. um, he owned diamond mines down there in Africa, and that's kind of where blood diamonds originated from. Was this guy? Guy was a horrible racist. I mean, he was racist to the extreme. I mean, he was straight up like the white race is the superior race. Africans are, you know, completely inferior to white Europeans, Um, so this guy worked Africans to death in his diamond mines. And yeah, we want to honor him by giving people Rhodes scholarships. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I mean, all that money
Thank you, Tony.
that he made off of, blood diamonds and the opium
Hi.
trade. Oh, it's Megs. He used that money really wisely. He started colleges and invested in the people who were going to be coming up, like that's why the Rhodes Scholar, what thing was established in the first place is because the man had an agenda and the agenda went beyond himself. He was serving whatever those powers that be. That's a whole nother conversation, and this isn't getting into conspiracy theories or anything like that. I don't
Right,
want people to
right.
get confused. This is like factual history, but the man had an agenda, and he made sure that his legacy was going to perpetuate into the future,
Mhm.
and part of that was the brainwashing of people who were born into positions where they would be able to affect change in the future. His plan was, I'm going to get my hands on those kids, those families, and we're going to direct, the future of the empire. That
It's a big
period.
Eurocentric mentality, um, which still, I mean, continues to this day. Um, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The guy is, in my opinion, he's a garbage human being.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah, and
yeah, that's just me.
no, I mean, I don't. Anybody who knows the history and knows who Cecil Rhodes was, I don't think they have any illusions that he was a good
But
contribution to society,
yeah, that guy he was not a good man.
Mm-mm. There was a book. Well, have you read Tragedy and Hope?
No, I haven't.
That put that one on your list for sure. So this guy, the author's name is escaping me at the moment. But he was kind of in with, these higher level elite planners and, things like that. He had skills that they found valuable. He was a professor. I forget which college he taught at. But he, they gave him access kind of into these inner workings, and he wrote a book, and the book is peppered with a lot of information, a lot of history, um, or that's the majority of the bulk of the work. But within just a few pages, like less than 50 pages, he really lays out exactly what the mentality is that these planners have, and what their intentions are and how they plan to carry out their agenda. And it's so fascinating, and it's you know the stuff that you might think would be questionable, he draws directly from their documents. They gave him access to all kinds of uh, different documents from, be like the university level, government level, the minutes from board meetings and all of this stuff. And he really paints this picture. Like I said, he kind of hides that stuff among a lot of other, like I said, history and um, uh, stories about different relationships that he's had with some of these people. But the main message in that book is like, y'all don't know what is going on. You think you're playing one game, and there's a whole nother game going on. That's Tragedy and Hope. You got to check it out, especially being a history major. um yeah, it'll your brain's gonna go.
Huh.
It's really, I'll
Yeah.
see. Actually, I want to see if I can just look up real quick. I can't, it's driving me crazy that I can't remember the name of the author. So just give me one second here.
Sure.
But this is how I heard about Cecil Rhodes. I mean, like I'd heard the name before. Oh, Carol Quigley. That's the name of the author, Carol Quigley. So, um, but that's how I heard about Cecil Rhodes. And like, what do you do? When you like realize like, the mentality of people who are in positions of authority, what do you do? What do you do with
Yeah.
that kind of information? It's really frustrating.
Yeah. Especially when grow up believing a certain thing, you know, and they this is the kind of stuff they don't really teach you in like public school history class. They don't teach you the darker aspects of history or U.S. history.
No, uh-uh.
They should. I
Yeah,
really think they should, but they
yeah,
yeah
they
they
really.
really don't.
Well,
Um,
history is written by the winners, and so
Typically, yeah, they typically are. That's the old saying. History is written by the victors.
by the victors. Yep.
Yeah. Um,
And that leaves us, well, and here's something that's always like really disturbed me. So if you go back in people's ancestry, like most Americans don't have to go back very far before they find an orphan in their lineage somewhere, you
mhm.
know? And that's disturbing to me because like just how we were talking about how valuable it is to have oral traditions passed down by people, especially like from um to children from adults that they really trust, that they're close with, like that's a really valuable tradition for any culture to have.
Yeah,
And so if we don't, if the majority of Americans came from orphans, we don't have any of that. Like there's no perspective or tradition or sense of history or
yeah,
belonging. And so, the powers that be can kind of come along and tell us whatever they want, and we don't have any way to refute it or justification for demanding evidence. And especially when we're taught in school that, I mean, our education system's based on the Prussian education system, which is only created to create good workers,
yeah.
so
Hmm.
we're not taught to think critically or ask questions or want to know why, you know um, so I feel like, and it's not just Americans that come from a history of orphans, like in the Victorian era England, they told unwed mothers that you're unfit mothers and they took their children, you know? And that happened all over the world. It happened in Russia. It happened in Australia. It's happened everywhere. So if you think about it, we now currently are like third generation from Victorian era, three generations of human beings who don't know where they come from or what history is or what is reality.
Yeah, right.
It to
Hmm.
me, it's mind blowing.
Very interesting. Yeah,
I just think, how are we supposed to be effective human beings to, because I feel like I don't want to get too spiritual, but for me, I feel like we all come from a creator. And not just that, but I feel that if that's it, for that to be possible, create the creator or whoever that is or whatever that is, I don't put any labels on it whatsoever, had to split and had to fracture itself so that it could come down here in the physical reality and experience the physical world. Um, and if that's true, which my feeling, my gut tells me that that's where I come from, then I have an obligation to offer the best possible experience. And that gives me a sense of purpose in my life. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Uh-huh.
I definitely feel like I'm here for a reason and I have a job to do. And if that's the nature of humanity, if everyone's experience and everyone's perspective is valuable and is a contribution to that you know, experience of creation or whatever, then we need to all have the right tools to be able to do that. And when you remove an entire species from their history and from their tradition and humanity, like
Mhm.
you can get them to do whatever you want. You can control that population to any means you want, you know? And like I said, we're about 3 generations removed from that. So shoot.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that sounds like a crazy rant, but that's really where my mind has been a lot lately is like, how much further would humanity be if we didn't have this mass removal of children from their cultures?
Mm, hmm. I don't know if it would be too much different than it already is now, honestly. Um, well, yeah, no, I don't think it'd be too much different than it is now. Because yeah, I mean, there are a lot of children removed from their culture, but those cultures are still around. You know, maybe not as massive as they once were, but they're still around and they can still be learned, and people can still teach those different cultures. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's one thing about cultural anthropologists. That's their main job is to learn these cultures, um,
Hmm.
which is another thing I really like. I'm really fascinated about like anthropology and cultural anthropology, and the study of different cultures around the world.
Hmm.
Heck, I was a TA in college for my anthropology for my anthropologist professor.
Hmm.
Um, but
Where do you start if you don't know where you come from, though?
that's I mean, yeah, that's true. And luckily, there are science. Science today has advanced so much, and you've got DNA testing and stuff like that. That's one way to start. I mean, you've got Ancestry now too,
Hmm.
23andMe.
I
Um,
can't find any of my ancestors. I hit a dead
you
end.
may not be able to find your ancestors right now, but at least that will give you a good starting point,
Hmm. Hmm.
somewhat of a starting point. Look at that particular region. I've done Ancestry in 23andMe, and I 23andMe seems to be a little bit more accurate. They can
Hmm.
actually narrow down their projections a little bit better
Right.
to more local region.
From family history, I know that on my dad's side, both my grandma and my great grandma uh, were were from Russia. On my grandma's side, they were German Russians, but on my grandpa's side, I'm not sure if they were Russian or if they were German or what the deal was exactly. But in the German Russian culture, they had a word that they used to describe the feeling of missing their homeland, because they had all left Germany and settled into this new country where they weren't like really accepted, and it was a big struggle. Like they didn't have any settlements to go to; they had to really build from the ground up. But they had a word called Heimweh, and it means a feeling deeper than homesickness. And um, my grandpa or my great grandpa, he came over from Russia when he was 6, and he was told that he was going to live with an uncle, but it seems to me that he got put on one of these orphan trains that was traveling to the Midwest after the Midwest was opened up for settlement. Um,
Huh.
and so they would put kids from the city. I think he started in Pittsburgh, but they would take him from New York, Pittsburgh, wherever, and haul them off into the middle of settlement territory, and I mean auction them off, I guess, as child labor. So he slept in a barn with the animals. He was treated as child labor. That's basically, so that's how my great grandpa grew up. And he didn't have, so I think, and I've always had a really when I heard that word Heimweh, I was like, that's the word. I've always had a feeling somewhat akin to homesickness, and I could never really quite describe it. And after hearing about that word and the history and why that word even came to be in the first place, it made a lot of sense to me, considering, you know, epidemiology, like the memory of our ancestors living in our cells as we speak, but I just I don't know, like, to get any deeper than that into, like, my own genealogy, like, I would have to do, like, DNA or something like that, and, my family's also Jewish, like, we don't put ourselves on paper, you know what I mean? Like, we don't want any
Are they part of
records.
like that Russian Jewish, the Russian Jew culture or Russian Jew?
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a friend who's one of those. Actually, he's uh, army friend who he actually speaks fluent Russian. But yeah, he came along those lines. Actually, went to Russia a few years back to go search out his roots. But I would like to go. Like it's hard to pinpoint exactly, at least on my father's side, uh, culturally, because his mom is Incan Indian, uh, and she's from Ecuador. She's still alive. I've met her. She doesn't remember me. She's got Alzheimer's really bad. She doesn't even remember how to speak English anymore. She's reverted back to Spanish. Um, and and his dad was African American. Maybe with some other small things, but mostly African American. Um, and I'm almost a quarter African. Um, I'm like 23% African. Um, can't you tell from my mocha skin and my dark curly hair?
All right, Redbeard.
Yeah, I got screwed on the jeans, man. um,
Can we get this man a tan?
right?
Just kidding.
um, but yeah, like it would be interesting. Like one of the places I want to go to is Ecuador to go seek out and bring my uncle Carlo along with me because he actually speaks the language fluently, and he actually lived down there in Ecuador for a little while. Um, and just kind of see my roots and like see that Incan culture, and I think it would be fascinating. Who knows where in Africa I came from? You know, I don't know if I can pinpoint it to an exact tribe.
Yeah, because
Well, actually,
that's
no, they actually do have a My African Ancestry DNA kit that specifically looks at African DNA.
oh, wow. That's really fascinating. Because yeah,
I should try that.
yeah, just saying that you're African, almost a quarter African, like, that doesn't say anything. That could mean anything.
Yeah, when I was younger, when I was a young adult, um, I was always too like I'm not scared to say it, but I didn't like talking about it because nobody ever believes me. I mean, look at me, dude. I've got the vanilla face, you know. Um, like whenever I told people that, yeah, I mean, my father was, Incan Indian and black, and he's African American, and they're like, no.
I don't believe it. Oh, that's funny. Nobody ever knows what to call me. They don't know what I am. I just look like a white girl. It's fine. They're like, you look like you're something, but you also look like you're white, so it's hard to tell. I'm like, okay. But then I colored my hair dark, and Jason says, oh, now you look like you're Russian. Now you look like you're Russian. I was like, okay.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah. He said he's going to start calling me Natasha.
from Goldeneye.
I don't know. I guess it's the first Russian sounding name that popped into his head.
That makes sense.
Yeah, he's just trying to razz me. Any chance he gets to razz me.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I think I'm going to go make dinner for the family.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Maggie's up there cooking right now, and I gotta get
Oh,
ready for search and rescue. I can't do it wearing this kilt, you know.
no, probably not. Well, you could, but you just might be flashing your coworkers, causing a distraction, you know. It
I
wouldn't
mean,
be
yeah,
good.
but you know, working around all that stuff is probably not a
Probably
good
not good.
sanity thing. So
Yeah.
I'll work on
Um,
it.
I would love to have you back on the podcast sometime. That was really
Yeah,
good. We went
yeah, that'd
for
be great. We can
we,
talk about kilts and Star Wars. No, I'm joking.
whatever you want, man. Whatever you want. We could go kilt shopping. It doesn't even matter.
I love kilts, man. You know, if
Yes,
I'm not doing search and rescue, I'm wearing a kilt.
that's awesome. That's good. I'm glad you decided you're like, this is my thing. I'm gonna do this all the time.
Mhm.
Seems way more comfortable anyhow.
It is.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, tell Maggie I said hi.
I will do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks for talking with me. I'll talk to you
Yeah,
soon.
no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.